Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today, due to popular request, I'm covering Fleem, which is the digital counterpart of the Green Goblin. So this will be a Grixis Mayhem discard deck, and on Arena we can start out by casting Goben for 2 mana, as opposed to Norman Osborn, a 1/1 that cannot be blocked, and when it deals combat damage to a player, we get to connive, so we get to draw a card and then discard, and if we discarded a non-land card this way, we get a +1/+1 counter, and then later we can transform Goben for 4 mana, or we can immediately cast Fleem out of the command zone for that same price if we don't want to go through Goben first, and then we'll get a 3/3 flyer with Menace, plus any additional +1 counters we might have picked up from conniving with Goben first, and then now spells we cast from our graveyard cost 2 generic less to cast, and then each non-land card in our graveyard has Mayhem with its Mayhem cost equal to its mana cost, so with Mayhem we can cast the card out of the graveyard if it was discarded this turn, so we can potentially use the connive from Goben to set up the Mayhem on Fleem if we transform it, but the deck is also going to have a ton of other discard outlets to get cards into the graveyard, so we can then cheaply cast them and accumulate value, since we basically get to double dip from our hand and from our graveyard. So if we take a look at our deck breakdown, the deck has 4 main categories, starting with mana acceleration, and especially 2 mana artifacts like the various talismans and signets are perfect, since if we discard them and have a Fleem in play, we get to cast them out of the graveyard for free, potentially generating mana in the process. Then we've got some removal spells. Some of these can also help us discard cards from our hand, like the new Knife Trick or a Bitter Triumph, but then we also have our more dedicated discard outlet category, and these are often effects that let us discard and draw, so we get to dig deeper into the deck while enabling Mayhem with Fleem. And then we also have a discard payoff category, as I like to call it, some cards that maybe trigger whenever we discard a card, sometimes giving us some useful effects in return. Some of these are also other Mayhem cards that we can maybe play out of the graveyard without needing Fleem if it does get removed over and over. And then we've got some more payoffs like the various Delve cards, which can make use of a full graveyard to cast other cards on the cheap. So these are the 4 main pillars of any Fleem deck, so that's kind of our rough breakdown. Now for the deep dive, starting with our mana acceleration, Chrome Mox can lead to some very explosive starts. We've got Dark Ritual, which can do the same, and then we've got all of the signets with Dimir, Izzet, Rakdos, and Arcane Signet, as well as the talismans, which can immediately make a colored mana, so these can be better than the signets at times when we want to be able to immediately tap them for colored mana. And then we've got Cold Steel Heart, Mind Stone can make colorless right away, Solar Transformer also enters tapped but can make any color, and then the Iron Crag. And then going up the curve, there's the Celestus, which can also maybe double up as a discard outlet if we don't have anything else, as well as a Worn Power Stone, which makes 2 colorless mana if we get to untap with it. Then our removal section includes Cut Down and Fatal Push in black. There's a Lightning Bolt, another classic. Then a Knife Trick can also double up as a discard outlet, or we can just pay 2 additional mana, but that can also maybe benefit from the discount. Then there's Cyclonic Rift, and any of these overload cards are also great, since we can still overload them out of the graveyard, which will then make use of that 2 mana discount from Fleem. There's Bitter Triumph, which can also discard a card as an additional cost. Then Amizium Mortars, another overload card, fine to cast for 2 mana, but especially nice if we can overload it, dealing 4 to all of the opponent's creatures. The House Grows Hungry, also from the new set, can also destroy a creature, and then on the following chapter we get to discard a card to maybe set up more Mayhem synergies. There's Toxic Deluge as the most powerful sweeper, as well as Withering Torment as an answer for enchantments, which we usually don't have access to in the Grixis colors, since we're not running any counter spells, since those aren't particularly synergistic with our game plan. And then Cut to Ribbons is also pretty nice, as we can cast the Cut half, and then Ribbons out of the graveyard with Aftermath can still help close out a game. Then we move on to our discard outlets, and Faithless Looting is as cheap as it gets, draw 2 and then discard 2, can also flash it back out of the graveyard. There's the Ghostly Pilfer, which is also pretty good just when you cast it normally, as you'll maybe draw a card when the opponent casts their commander, but we can also discard cards from our hand at will to maybe set up more Mayhem. Then we've got a bunch of these 2-drops that help us draw and discard. The Elite also has Vigilance and Prowess. We've got Malcolm, if it hits the opponent we get to loot, as well as a Rona, which can untap whenever we cast a legendary spell, so we can maybe activate it multiple times. Fear of Missing Out when it enters helps us discard and draw, with Delirium can set up an additional attack step. Evora can make blood tokens, which can then also help us discard and draw. Quinn's Insight is also another very powerful enchantment in this strategy, as we'll get to discard a card each turn, draw a card in return, and that can also help set up more Mayhem synergies, also dealing damage to the opponent in the process. Psychic Frog, another awesome discard outlet that sees play in lots of different formats, and it's great here too, getting additional +1 counters, drawing cards when it hits the opponent. And then a Smuggler's Copter we can also maybe discard and then cast for free out of the graveyard, and then it's a powerful vehicle that can also help us draw and then discard. And then a lot of these 3-drops cost 2 generic mana plus a color, so we can just cast them for a single mana with Fleem available. And then Kiora helps us draw 2 and then discard 2, so can set up even more Mayhem synergies, and with a full graveyard can also make an 8/8 token. There's the Scholar helping us draw 2 and discard. Often want to discard 2 cards, even though we could maybe just get away with discarding an instant or sorcery, or even a creature with flying. There's the Winter Night Stories, also has Harmonize, so we can maybe cast it twice. Fable of the Mirrorbreaker also doesn't need an introduction, helping us make mana with a Shaman token, can discard on Chapter 2, and eventually the Reflection can also provide a lot of value. There's Tarsa, which can discard up to 2 cards when she enters and drawing 2. We also have a Big Score and Pirate's Pillage, discarding a card to draw 2 and make 2 treasure tokens, so if we can cast those at a discount, we essentially get to play them for free. And then Kefka also has more discard synergy. When it enters or attacks, each player has to discard, and we maybe get to draw a bunch of cards in return. Can also maybe transform it with all the extra mana from our signets and talismans, and then the transformed version can also close out a game very quickly. And then we move on to our discard payoffs, and this is a pretty broad category, so it includes cards like Reanimate. If an expensive creature ends up in the graveyard, we can cheaply get it back. There's the Mako, picking up additional +1 counters whenever we discard a card. Eenti, when we discard, will exile the top card that we get to play until the end of our turn, so it can also provide a steady stream of card advantage, but also doubles up as a discard outlet. Kroxa can make use of a full graveyard by escaping, and then it's a powerful 6/6, making the opponent discard more cards. Riel is one of our better payoffs, as whenever we discard 1 or more cards for the first time each turn, we get to draw that many cards, also grows with a number of instants and sorceries. We've got a Ruzik, which is both a discard outlet and a discard payoff, as we can maybe discard it and then play it out of the graveyard with Mayhem, even without Fleem. And then if we have the 5/4 in play, it can also help us discard, making additional treasures in the process. Monument to Endurance, another awesome payoff, as we can choose multiple modes, drawing cards, making treasures, or making the opponent lose 3 whenever we discard a card. The Stitcher's Wings, another Mayhem card that we can maybe attach for free and cast for free as well if we have Fleem in play, giving +2 power, flying, and haste. Then Wander we actively want to keep in the graveyard, as it will give all our creatures flying, assuming we control an island, but that also includes our non-basic islands. Then a Shieldred rewards us for drawing a ton of cards, as we'll gain 2 life each time, while draining the opponent for doing the same. Captain Howler can also reward us for discarding cards, bumping up our creatures, and then drawing additional cards in the process. We've got another Mayhem card that can reanimate a cheap creature. The Goblin's another Mayhem card that we can maybe cast for a single red as a 5/4 with haste, so that's also pretty good. Hollow One we can routinely cast for free if we've discarded 3 or more cards in one turn, or maybe discarded 2 cards including Hollow One, and then with a discount from Fleem we can also play it for free. And then we've got our Delve card draw spells with Treasure Cruise drawing 3 and Dig Through Time looking at the top 7 to put 2 in hand. And then the mana base has a few powerful utility lands which can also come in handy, such as the Sanitarium can activate it so each player draws and then discards, can also set up our various discard synergies. We've got Ancient Tomb tapping for double colorless, so we can immediately cast a Signet or Talisman on turn 1. And then the channel lands like the Abandoned Mire and Soaring City can also maybe tie into some of our discard synergies while interacting on the board or getting something back out of the graveyard. And then of course we've got plenty of fetch lands, a couple basics, can always fetch up our shock lands or surveil lands in each color pair, so the mana base is also pretty solid. And then finally the Nightclub also has Mayhem, so if we discard it we can also replay it out of the graveyard at the cost of 2 life. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing Teval, kind of a landfall deck. Our hand seems functional. Can ramp out turn 3 Fleem. Got 1 discard outlet, Riel can draw more. So we're off to a decent start. Now a Ripples of Undeath. Wander also a card we eventually want in the graveyard. Although currently missing an island to give the team flying. And Ripples could get an Abrupt Decay, although Fleem is 4 mana, so survives the 2 mana removal spell. So our opponent's not getting anything back after all. And now Chatterfang, a perfect target for Knife Trick. Never mind, opponent's gonna sack it to a Flare of Cultivation. Did they not have double green? I guess not. Okay, so then Winter Night Stories can still function as a discard outlet. Can discard my Talisman and Riel. And then I need to make sure to have the right colors here, but that should work. So I'll decline to discard a creature, but then I can still discard a creature alongside something else. Play Talisman for 0 mana. Play Riel. And then I can still maybe fetch and surveil. Winter Night Stories, I guess I can still cast as well. With Mayhem. Forgot that works as well here. And then I don't have any colorless spells I can cast for free. So I'll just discard, I guess Wander could go, since I don't plan to actually cast it. And keep the lanes. Okay. So now Riel flies. Now whenever I discard 1 or more cards, I get to draw that many. And we've got some fun payoffs here as well with Kefka. Opponent persisting a Nyxbloom Ancient that they milled. Okay, that's bad news. Tripling their mana. Eternal Witness can get back. Something goes for Abrupt Decay to take out Riel. And I currently do not have an answer to the Nyxbloom, so if that stays in play, it's probably game over. So maybe step 1, play Psychic Frog, which can discard Kiora so I can cast it for 1 mana. And see where we end up. So let's see, can I use my Signet to get that out of the way? Okay, Tarsa and Kefka could go, and then I can still play both. Although then I don't leave myself with the mana to maybe cast a removal spell. So I could just go Kefka and a land. Sure. Cast Kefka. And then I can always discard Tersa to the Psychic Frog. For now we'll discard a land. Opponent also discarded a land, picked up Kroxa. So I can just Knife Trick the Eternal Witness, but that's it. So I guess I can keep going with discarding Tersa. Cast it for 1 mana. Kroxa can go, and a land. Okay, found the Mizzium Mortars, but a little bit late here. Don't have the mana to cast it anymore. If Tersa attacks, I'll exile a card from my graveyard, so there's a risk that we exile Kroxa or Wander. So probably not worth it. But next turn I could maybe overload a Mizzium Mortars, if we're still alive. So our opponent's gonna get back fetch lanes for Tatiova now, to draw even more cards. Well, Mizzium Mortars is looking good. Can cast it even if they deal with most of my board. Kiora also threatens to make a Scion of the Deep. So we'll see. Soul Trader. Can maybe go infinite with Chatterfang. And the memory's returning. So they're digging. Found Dismember and Terror Tide. So they grabbed the Terror Tide to essentially wipe my board. -X, where X is the number of permanent cards in their graveyard. And that number's pretty high with all these lanes. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, that's going to be a one-sided board wipe, unfortunately. So then we'll get rid of Dismember. Do they not have the black mana for Terror Tide? I guess they can use Soul Trader to fix their colors. Maybe Flashback Memory's returning, but I imagine they've got other plans. Opponents sacking their own Nyx Bloom. Can they maybe reanimate everything? Terror Tide. I guess, yeah, this is not a one-sided board wipe, so their creatures would have died regardless. Okay, so that happens. So I guess I didn't need my Missing Mortars after all. And then they still had a Smuggler Surprise. Putting in a white of the Reliquary and 6. Okay, so cannot quite finish off the white. So that's a problem. If I replay Fleem, that's 6 mana. Yeah, I can't do much else afterwards. Could also be a Kroxa turn, but our opponent's got plenty of lands they don't mind discarding. So yeah, this is tough. Probably need to deal with 6, so they can start retracing permanents out of the graveyard. And then I could still get back Kroxa. Or I can still try Fleem with a Dark Ritual, can looting, discard Mortars, and maybe find some other removal spells. Maybe that's still my best hope. Okay, so I can play a 1-mana Scholar. And then a 1-mana Mortars. Okay, now the house grows hungry, I can discard. So I can remove both of their creatures. I do need to keep the lanes, so probably get rid of the Knife Trick now. Destroy the whites. And Mortars 6. So yeah, Fleem doing work. Next turn I get a free discard from House Grows Hungry, so that can set up more Mayhem. Although a Shifting Woodland is actually quite threatening, since that can turn into a Nyx Bloom Ancient as well. So we'll see if that's the plan. Oh, by the way, I'll be attending MagicCon Atlanta this weekend, so if any of you are attending as well, make sure to stop by at the meet and greet on Friday. That's from 12:30 to 2 p.m. in the Creator Central, and then on Saturday you can also see me in action during the Commander show with CGB and Voxy, and that's from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. in the Showcase panel room, so make sure to stop by and have a look. But for now, let's go back to the gameplay. 3 unknown cards in hands. And we know they don't have any scary creatures in hand, since they would have just put those in play with a Smuggler Surprise. So they do get back the Woodlands, bonus at 11. And just cast Teval, followed by a Deathrite. Bitter Triumph was a good draw. So can discard Bitter Triumph, cast it for 1 mana. Discard another card. Should maybe start by playing the Insight, since this will deal additional damage when we play spells from our graveyard. And yeah, our opponent scoops it up, so we're gonna be able to cross the finish line here. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Gogo, Master of Mimicry. We can answer it with Cut to Ribbons. The rest of my hand leaves a lot to be desired though, so I think I still mulligan. This is better. Start with the Sewers. And then Mizzy Mordors would be an answer to their commander. Could also look for some ramp cards instead. But I think it's still good enough. Can discard Cut down to Kiora. For now, play tap lands. And then Kiora's also good at setting up a cheap hollow one. Opponent ramps with a Mind Stone. Alright, I'll resolve Riel while I can. Because then we would get additional card advantage from Kiora. Although I may need to deal with Gogo first. Could also cast Fleem, so we've got a few options. I suppose if I Mizzy Mordors I can still cast Goben, which could have also been cast on turn 2. So let's get just a basic, although I may need black mana later. And then with Goben in play, we can also enable Riel. Can also attack, discard with the Connive, transform, and then make use of the 2 mana discount. Although that's going to require at least 5 mana. And Mnemonic Sphere. Can draw cards. Opponent passes with a bunch of mana up. So, yeah, let's go ahead and attack. See what happens. Discard. Now I can go for a Talisman, play that for free. Or I can still go for the line I mentioned, where we discard Kiora. I'll fetch, transform Goben into Fleem, leaving a blue mana. Cast a 1 mana Kiora, and if this resolves, I can discard both artifacts and play both for free, which also sets up Hollow 1. Alright, opponent might have a counterspell here. Or no, just makes a duplicate. So that still resolves. And yeah, this seems good. Accelerate my mana a bunch. So then probably just go for Hollow 1. Could have also cycled it, I suppose, and then cast it out of the graveyard to draw a card. But now I can still play Mako and Cut down, I believe. Although, let's see, how does the mana work out? I guess I can do both, I have to decide. Let's go for the Mako. Can deal with the Spell Thief next turn. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. Seeing the power of Fleem. Opponent now with their own Kiora. Can also be cut down. 3 cards in graveyard, can get that number up to enable our Kiora, or maybe set up a Delved Treasure Cruise. But it's nice that we have another discard outlet with Winter Night Stories to enable Riel and set up more Mayhem. Now Mox Amber is enabled with a legend, so they have at least 4 mana up. Okay, let's start with Winter Night Stories. Maybe make use of the Signet mana, since that can be annoying otherwise. Can always harmonize it as well. Alright, so I can discard Treasure Cruise and Cut down, and then I might be able to cast a Treasure Cruise here. Or I can go for Fear. And Fear can discard Treasure Cruise as well. Draw for Riel. He resolves. Can discard the Signet, cast it for free. And then I want to try and harmonize here. So with reduced Mayhem, tapping a 2-powered creature is enough. And then now I can discard Tersa. And that's probably good enough. Cast Tersa. Maybe discarding one more card to enable Delve was worth it. But we'll see. So should be able to cast a Treasure Cruise. So I can fetch. Swamp might suffice, as I can still cut down Kiora. Then we should have 7 cards in graveyard for my Kiora, which can now attack. And then second main I can still delve a Treasure Cruise, if I'm not mistaken. So then Tersa doesn't want to attack, since I would exile something. And Riel probably doesn't want to trade either. Yes, please. And let's Treasure Cruise. And leaving maybe my creature in the graveyard. At some point I was also playing with Crucible Worlds, which can get back your lands from the graveyard, but we usually end up drawing more lands than we need. And then I can discard some more lands here, probably won't need the Nightclub. Still grows the Mako. So can our opponents bounce my entire board or somehow combo off and go infinite? Alright, this looks like an overloaded Cyclonic Rift to me. So then, is there anything I need to do before attacking? I guess I can float some mana. Cast something, but it's just gonna end up getting bounced. This can get back a creature from the graveyard, so I guess I can start there. Could even play Psychic Frog to discard it and Mayhem, which then also triggers Riel. So maybe our opponent will feel inclined to respond. Alright, so now I can go ahead and attack. Untap, doesn't matter. So is it a Cyclonic Rift? No, it's an Aetherize, so could have maybe played around that one a little bit better. So back to hands. And then replay Fleem. Since that's going to help discount my other spells. Opponent counters. Can let that go to the graveyard since I can still Mayhem the Gift of Servitude. And then is there anything else I can do? Maybe play the Mako. I guess getting back Kiora is also an option, but now I'm kind of locked into getting back Fleem. And then we'll play the Mako and pass. Suppose I could also Psychic Frog a bunch just to play Hollow One, since I have plenty of lands and I'm gonna have to discard to hand size anyway. Alright, so we're having fun. Pass it back. And that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Rofellos, so definitely a must-answer creature. We do have the Museum Mortars, and we're on the play, so should be able to cast it in time. We'll try it. For now, I do need to surveil Dark Ritual. Could maybe speed up the process of casting Fleem. Sure. Next turn I can go Mako plus Nightclub. Or I could have just gone for a Ritual, but yeah, I didn't have enough colored mana to cast Fleem that way. Alright, so now we need to Museum Mortars Rofellos. Can I do anything else? Yeah, that's gonna cost 2 mana. Nothing I can really do with a Dark Ritual. I would have 5. I guess I could go Museum Mortars plus a 3-drop, but Scholar's gonna be much more exciting once we have Fleem in play. So yeah, I think this is just a straightforward Mortars Rofellos. And don't really want to offer the trade either. Now a Baloth. Don't have many counter spells or any counter spells really, so that's fine. Alright, land is good. So just cast Fleem. Save the Dark Ritual for next turn perhaps. Or if I Ritual, then I can play Fleem and the Elite. Yeah, that might be worth it here. And then next turn we can enable Fleem in a variety of ways. Although we'll probably need to draw into a removal spell for Rofellos, otherwise that's going to make a ridiculous amount of mana. Alright, so step 1. Can activate the Elite, discarding the Scholar, cast it for 1 mana out of the graveyard, and Shieldred's pretty good too. So if I cast Scholar, discard Shieldred and the Goblins, I can play a 2 mana Shieldred and the 1 mana Goblins. Although we didn't draw anything useful, sadly. But this is still a decent turn. Showing the power of Fleem. But our opponent might be able to cast a finisher that just wins the game. So we'll see. Primeval Titan's a good starting point, but it's not a game-ending threat necessarily. Does set them up for next turn. Untap, find, reanimate. So can activate the Elite unless an attack with it would be better. Yeah, I guess we start by drawing and discarding. Could also attack, maybe offer the trade and then reanimate second main. But yeah, don't have to discard the reanimate. So what happens if I attack all out? I imagine Primeval Titan trades for Shieldred, or they might just block the Mako, let Shieldred through, but then they're also taking 5 in the air, so then they would just kind of die to Shieldred. So maybe an all-out attack is a reasonable starting point. Could also Chrome Mox just to trigger Prowess. Sure. Not imprint anything. But at least we have a slightly better attack now. Opponent blocks the Goblins. Can get that one back. So, may as well draw and discard. Discard Mindstone, can play that for free. Opponent falls to 4. Cast my free Mindstone. And draw a card. then reanimating the goblins versus Baloth. There's no huge difference. Can reanimate the Baloth next turn, perhaps. Or keep reanimate to get back Shieldred if it does get destroyed. Because right now our opponent's falling to 2. So if they don't have some crazy big play to win the game, we might get there next turn. But that is a lot of mana. And yeah, Craterhoof is probably game. Although maybe not. 17 plus 5 would still survive that, except our opponent also has Upandriel. Alright, so that's well over 30 damage here, so sadly not gonna survive that. Well, still a close one, just needed 2 more damage. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the ninjutsu deck with Yuriko. We do have a lightning bolt to at least interfere a little bit, but the rest of my hand is a little slow to get going. No ramp, so I'm gonna struggle to maybe get my discard synergies online. That being said, we can also cast Goben for 2 mana, so maybe this is good enough. And then I might have to just keep a bolt, because if they play a 1-drop, I already have to take it out. Otherwise they can threaten ninjutsu. But they don't have anything yet. Maybe a flash creature. So then now I'm forced to fetch Watery Grave to have all 3 colors. Play Goben. Non-zero chance it gets countered. But kind of expect like a Spectral Sailor into ninjutsu next turn. Yep. Well, I called it out. So then I could have kept up Lightning Bolt, wait for them to ninjutsu, and then Bolt afterwards. And of course the strength of Yuriko is that it doesn't have to pay the commander tax if you use commander ninjutsu, always cost 2 mana. But I do get to hopefully draw into a land here, can still bolt Yuriko, and then it'll take them a few turns to set that back up. They have to discard to hand size. They did reveal a pretty expensive ninja, so I did lose 4 life there as well. Alright, Mindstone is something, but if I also want a lightning bolt, that's not good enough. Alright, found the land, so now I can discard. Maybe Treasure Cruise is too ambitious. Maybe Hollow One needs to go. Although I'll be able to cast a cheap Hollow One the turn I cast Tersa. Maybe have lost my window to get the monument going. And I should ditch that instead. Could still cast a monument this turn, but yeah, I think bolting is too important. Possible they have a free spell in hand. Flare of Malice, so that forces me to sacrifice my creature now. Fair enough. Could have left my commander in the graveyard to maybe exile it with Delve and Treasure Cruise, although that's a little bit risky if they can maybe take away the Treasure Cruise with another discard spell. Did not have another Watery Grave left to have double black for Shieldred, so that could also come back to bite me. Alright, Hasty Ginger Brute can still ninjutsu Yuriko. A Riel would be nice to get in play, but I think I'd gotta go for Tersa into Hollow One for 1 mana. And then I have to discard now. I'm gonna keep Treasure Cruise, that's my way to refuel, so then I need to ditch Shieldred and Riel. And then I can play Hollow One, Could also cycle it in the hopes of exiling it with Tersa, but that seems needlessly risky. And then I should probably keep my Tersa back, because otherwise next turn they can tap down my only blocker, keep connecting, and that's gonna hurt. Their opponent goes for Gingerbrute. Tersa does have haste, so I can actually block. Opponent sacking Gingerbrute to gain 3. That's a strange play. Did they misclick, or did they need to enable Revolt or something? I'll block. Maybe they just want Yuriko back in the command zone to set up Spectral Sailor. Okay, so a couple options. Casting Fleem would give me a blocker for Spectral Sailors, so then they cannot necessarily ninjutsu. Could go for a Delved Treasure Cruise, maybe keep up Cyclonic Rift. So those are all considerations. Yeah, what's the worst that can happen if I cast Fleem? My opponents could have a counter, otherwise they flash in Sailor, maybe they have a cheap removal spell and then they can still ninjutsu. Still not a disaster. So we'll start by attacking. Could of course also play Goben for 4 mana and then still have Cyclonic Rift up. But Goben does not block a Sailor. Fleem resolves. Currently missing a discard outlet to enable Mayhem, but I do have a Treasure Cruise which I can cast for pretty cheap. Opponent had a Feltha Profane. So I'm not gonna put Fleem back in the command zone, so we can delve it away, and then we can send it back. Dark Ritual I could cast. Give me access to a little bit more mana before we keep going. So definitely need to exile Fleem. And then probably good to keep creatures in the graveyard, generally speaking. So Real I can still maybe get back later. Back to the command zone. Alright, and then not the best set of draws, but I can still recast Fleem. It's gonna cost 8 mana. That's good enough. Still cheaper than playing Goben and transforming. Can always sack Mindstone for a redraw. Now the Stashed Skeleton making a menacing skeleton. And an Invisible Stalker, pretty good ninjutsu enabler, hexproof and cannot be blocked. Arona, I can even cast the 5/5 trample version now. So can I just overload Cyclonic Rift and win? Looks to be the case. Alright, get in for 10. And there we go, even defeated the Yuriko deck. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Hearthhull. So kind of a Junt, a Landfall sacrifice deck. My hand is missing blue mana. It's gonna make it hard to deploy Fleem, even though we can maybe be off to a quick start with the Dark Ritual. This is a bit more balanced. Can always cut a Mana Elf, otherwise we get Inti down. Kami, not quite a Mana Elf, we want to remove. Our opponent could very well be on a Strip Mine deck, trying to destroy all our lanes. Now, Quint's Insight's a good one too. Could even go for Goben. Yeah, the problem with Insight early when I don't have any Mayhem cards in hand is that it doesn't really net me card advantage. So then it could be better to just get Goben in play, which can maybe draw into a ramp card or more lands, will mean that I'll overall have paid 6 mana for Fleem as opposed to just 4. Traveling Chocobo, a fine target for cut. Alright, so I can consider playing Inti, which can synergize with the Connive. Could even just play the House Grows Hungry on the Chocobo. So I've got a few options. Start by attacking, maybe our draw will change our decision. So that's a tap land I could play. Yeah, maybe I don't need Inti, just keep Quint's Insight as a recurring discard outlet. Harder for them to remove an enchantment. And then Transformer's good, because I could play that for free. After I attack, Connive and Transform. And then we keep House Grows Hungry to deal with larger threats. Opponent runs out their commander. Okay, so can attack. And discard Transformer. Make a Fleem. And play a free Transformer. And then maybe next turn we can start by playing a Scholar, which then discounts my other spells. Assuming Fleem survives. Never mind. Binding will take care of it, sadly. So now it's going to take us a while to rebuild. So now they can start using Hearthhull to sacrifice, draw to play an extra land. Could just recast a 6 mana Fleem. That's not out of the question. Or I can play Quint's Insight and Rona. And then Insight can discard the Talisman next turn, play Fleem, immediately play a free Talisman. And then Rona can maybe keep things going. It's not quite as mana efficient now, but it maybe lines up better in case I have more creature removal. So then even though I could play the Talisman, I'm going to keep it as kind of a free discard, if you will. And then maybe we wait for Hearthhull to become a creature to use our House Grows Hungry. Eventually exiling their graveyard's also relevant if they have any ways to replay lands out of the graveyards, and yeah, case in point. So now the Explorer probably needs to go. Opponent's still maybe digging for their strip mine. So we need to make something happen before we lose all our lands. So I can play Fleem, play free Talisman, use Rona to discard House, and then play a 1 mana House. Azusa now too, to combo with the Explorer. So they have 2 more land drops, so all the mana they'll ever need. So that's highly concerning. So no strip mines yet. Are we done? Opponent can still activate Hearthhull. And that lets them play an extra land as well. Can't quite fully station this turn. Okay, I think we're done now. So I'll get to Surveil. And then, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Perhaps more artifacts I can play for free. So I can chain together more spells. Cyclonic Rift isn't super helpful in this matchup when our opponent has a bunch of lands in play. Could bounce Hearthhull, I suppose, for maybe just 1 mana. So it's not the worst card. I think I still have to do better. And draw Ruzik. So discard Talisman. Find Kefka. Play Fleem. I guess we can loot with Rona. Cut down, not enough to take out the Explorer. Could take out Azusa, but I'm kind of locked into house on Explorer here. So then, do I keep cut down? Yeah, it's probably my weakest card. Play Talisman. And loot with Rona. Pirate's Pillage. I'm close to casting, a mana short, sadly. So then, discard house, cast house, take out Explorer, and hope we're not too far behind here. Their opponent's drawn a lot of cards with their commander's ability, so they'll likely have more removal in hand. If I do get to untap with Fleem, next turn I get to discard of both House Grows Hungry and Quint's Insight. So we can easily cast a bunch of spells for 1 or 2 mana. Ruzik would be 1 mana with Mayhem. Pillage basically pays for itself. But I could easily beat that here to Hearthhull. Especially if they have Escape Shift. Opponent's making a ton of mana, so it's not going to be good for me. A World Soul's Rage for 12. Get back all your lanes, including a bunch of these new Capenna fetch lanes that sacrifice themselves. So those will burn me out. I guess I'm at 1, so I could still jump Hearthhull, maybe. But without Fleem, is life even worth living? So back to the command zone. I do have a Ribbons in the graveyard. I'm forced to discard or else I die, so can discard my Mayhem card. And then I guess there was Quint's Insight, which is also not optional, so still had to discard anyway. So now, what do we get rid of? So I'm gonna have to Bitter Triumph Hearthhull, opponent can replay it. They cannot station it all the way, so I'm not quite dead, assuming I make enough blockers. So, need to keep Bitter Triumph. I guess Fable might be too slow. And then can play Ruzik. Tempting to play Kefka actually, so I can pull further ahead. Yeah, sure, let's cast Kefka, which also lets me trigger Rona. And then still need to keep the Bitter Triumph, so we'll discard the Pillage. Kefka, discard a creature. Opponent had an instant, so I got to draw 2. And now I can Bitter Triumph, discarding a land perhaps. Keep Shieldred to gain life back. And then, yeah, we're not dead on board. So that's more than I could have asked for. I'll replay Hearthhull, can fully station and then draw. Yeah, this Kami certainly has seen some stuff. Their opponent goes digging. What can they find? A Nissa that can find additional elves and elementals by sacking their fetch lanes, assuming they have enough fetchable lanes left. And they had 2 lands left in hand, so that'll trigger Nissa. And, well, could have been worse, Elvish Reclaimer. Although, I suppose that's a 3-4 here, since we didn't exile their graveyard yet. And a 3-4 in conjunction with Nissa can fully station Hearthhull, which can now sacrifice a fetch land, and that's game over. Well, that's disappointing after almost getting to untap here with Shieldred to stabilize us. Can see what Rona would have drawn into. A big score. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Gyruda, typically a combo deck that wants to make a whole bunch of copies to mill us out. So then I need to be off to a quick start. Bitter Triumph's not going to be super helpful until later. So maybe I need to dig for some mana acceleration, even though this hand is functional. And this is better. And then we'll Surveil. Could also wait, but need to get a red source. So black-red. And I'll keep another lane for now. Play the Signets. And then we're looking at a turn 3 Fleem with plenty of discard effects to enable it. Okay, hopefully we get to untap with Fleem. Opponent ramps a bit more with a Replicating Ring. And an Iron Crag, so next turn they could already Gyruda. Okay, so step 1. Pirate's Pillage maybe. Discard Kiora, cast a 1-mana Kiora, go from there. Can discard Winter Night Stories. And now a Signet as well. So I can play a free Signet. Play Winter Night Stories. Should I make mana with a Signet? Could be worth it. So cast it for 1 mana. And discard a Scholar, which I could still cast. And then, yeah, I think I might have chosen the wrong mode on Stories, since it shouldn't have gotten exiled. But that's alright. Play Scholar. And then probably won't need Cut Down. Although also could have discarded couple of lanes here to maybe set up Kiora a bit better. So not a bad turn. Can discard a few more lanes. But we'll see if our opponent can just win on the spot with Gyruda. If they have enough clone effects. So Metamorph, copy Gyruda. They are enabling Kiora for us, at least. Alright, opponent goes for copying Fleem, so they're not gonna try and combo with Gyruda. Fair enough. So I can use Fatal Push with Revolt to clear a path. And then I could also bounce Gyruda for what it's worth. Can maybe keep that available. Although then they could ambush Kiora, so... We'll push. I have 2 legends, so only cost me 2 mana to channel. And then we might be digging through time here as well. Attack first while we still have enough cards for Kiora. Okay, so let's dig through time. Something along these lines. Opponent might have a response with 1 mana they have up. Find Cyclonic Rift, although I won't be able to keep that up to bounce anything. So I guess I could still play the Mako, grab a Kefka as well, or grab the Elites as another discard outlet, although we could always use the Sanitarium. So yeah, maybe I grab Cyclonic Rift. What if I bounce one of their artifacts? They can still cast Gyruda. So I'll just grab the Elites and cast it now. And then cross our fingers that we don't get milled to death. And Gyruda's back. Hostage Taker could now steal my 8/8 as well, and that's what they go for. Could also steal Kiora. Goes for Kiora. At least we got our 8/8 token out of it. And get to untap, and Toxic Deluge is interesting. So maybe start with activating the Elite so I can cast a 3-mana Kefka, which can then in turn discard more stuff. Monument is also quite tempting. Although, let's see. Yeah, I guess we can start with a Monument. Play that for 1 mana. And then maybe cast Kefka. Could also activate Sanitarium to discard Kefka and give us a discount. And then Monument starts by making treasure. Cast Kefka. I'll be discarding a land. Now I could draw a card or make them lose 3. Let's go with draw a card. Find Transformer. So I'm a bit light on discard outlets now, but I can still attack. Opponent jumps with Gyruda. Maybe they can flicker it. Malaki Rebirth to bring it back. Alright, could be bad for me. So Gyruda's back. Anything interesting? Could go for my Psychic Frog. And then we'll just play Transformer and pass. I do have enough legends to channel Takenuma for 1 mana. So maybe playing the Signet's better. So they can cast Kiora. So by discarding Takenuma, I would trigger the Monument. So I could make them lose 3 life. So then we don't need much to cross the finish line, although now Spark doubles the scary one with Gyruda. As they get to keep those copies in play. Aether is at least not a clone effect, but they can maybe draw into one. We should have enough in the air to win the game. I guess there's Psychic Frog, which can maybe get in the way. So, Arise from the Grave. They do have some scary ones in the graveyard. Giving the mana drain face up is kind of scary too. So it could go face down like so. I think we show them the mana drain. Opponent grab the other pile. So what's our opponent gonna reanimate? Maybe Jingataxius. It's gonna be Villas instead. So whenever they lose life, they draw that many cards. So I'll respond now by channeling, triggering monuments. And then we'll see what we want to return. And our opponent scoops it up, alright. I guess our flyers can go the distance now. So very close one against Gyruda. Awesome. Alright, so we get to see this Grixis Fleem deck in action, and yeah, I'm quite satisfied with how the deck turned out. There's of course a lot of ways to build a deck like this when you have access to so many colors and so many different cards to choose from, but in general you want to stick to having enough discard outlets and then enough 2 and 3 mana cards that get a significant discount from being discarded with Mayhem, so that you can get a lot of value out of Fleem, and that'll give you those very explosive starts as we were able to showcase in this video. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.